Ryan Day not happy with his defensive coaching staff, and we are joined now by Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyesScoop.com. And Gerd, there's a lot of questions about Kerry Combs and his job security right now. Ryan Day would say he's still the defensive coordinator, but that was at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Things can change quickly in the big-time world of college athletics, and Kerry Combs certainly on thin ice for the Buckeyes.
Very thin ice, and as Ryan did, it's becoming more than alarming, and he realized that coming off the field that something needs to change. And when he talked to us after the game, he was saying, is it coaching, is it personnel, is it scheme? Talking to him today, it may be a semblance of those things, but somebody's going to bear the brunt of that. And Kerry Combs has now been the defensive coordinator for two different Ohio State teams, and the defense is yet to be able to perform even as well as an above average Big Ten team. And they should be doing much better than that. Ability lays with Kerry Combs, as Combs said after the game. So if he wants to accept that responsibility, Ryan Day will probably more than likely hand it to him, and then now perhaps hand it to somebody else.
We saw USC make a coaching change after 2 weeks. We've seen some offensive coordinators get shown the door after a few weeks. If Ohio State should make that decision, there are some interesting candidates, including one in-house. Paul Rhodes is an analyst for the Buckeyes. He's got experience, and there are some other potential candidates out there for Ohio State if they decide to make a change right now.
Side of the Ohio State sphere right now, Ryan Day was asked about Paul Rhodes. Paul Rhodes is an analyst for the Buckeyes, not able to actually coach any of the players, and what Ryan Day said, it would be unfair to give that responsibility to Paul Rhodes because he doesn't know the players. So if somebody like Paul Rhodes, who is around the program, part of the program, doesn't know the players well enough, then what could we expect from him going outside the program and hiring somebody else who doesn't even know the program? So it seems like it would be an internal switch some things around. Matt Barnes, the defensive backs coach, has called defenses before. He did it at Maryland while he was there, and I believe while DJ Durkin was on suspension, being prepared to be fired. And so he's had that kind of role before. He's been the guy up in the press box, upstairs, sending stuff down to Kerry, I assume, because Kerry being on the sidelines, he has a different vantage point than many other defensive coordinators. And maybe that's the easy fix, is sending Kerry Combs upstairs so that he can see the defense better. But it's clear that what has been going on since Kerry Combs was hired and they've been doing this, it's no longer going to be acceptable. And not that it was ever acceptable before, but now Ryan Day is going to have them do something about it. And he even talked about being involved with the defense more, which he also said was annoying. And it takes him away from the offense. It takes him away from the special teams. And he shouldn't have to do it because these are all professionals in the defensive coaching room.
Let's talk a little about the personnel on the field for Ohio State. A hit there with Josh Proctor getting hurt against Oregon, and he is out for the season. So you're taking your best safety out of the rotation. But I think a lot of fans are also looking at this defensive line, the vaunted rushmen that aren't really getting much pressure on quarterbacks. And part of that is that you had Oregon scheming against it, getting the ball out quickly. But if you're not getting pressure on the defense, that's making it even more difficult on your back seven. That's the lesson we learned a few years ago when Nick Bosa was hurt and they didn't have that same type of defense they thought they were going to have. So how can the rushmen make a difference on the field?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I was rewatching the game, and a couple of times you saw the defensive ends almost just stopped rushing in order to make sure that Anthony Brown, the Oregon quarterback, didn't escape them, didn't go around and get out of contain. So you wonder if they were so concerned about getting out of their, whatever it is they need to do more. They need to be a more disruptive unit. Ryan Day said he's not happy with that situation right now. If they can get upfield, that makes the linebackers better, and the linebackers have been an issue as well. Like, it all starts up front with that defensive line. Not only are they not helping themselves, they're not helping the guys behind them right now. And it's disappointing because these are all guys who were very highly recruited, have played well in the past, had some question marks last year, and stepped up a great deal with, Haskell Garrett stepped up. But overall, it's guys who haven't quite lived up to their billing. I think we all thought that would happen this year. They're still working on it. And maybe some changes there as well in terms of just asking them to do different things, letting them maybe be more aggressive, maybe that will jumpstart something.
And at the linebacker position, from a Northwest Ohio perspective, Dallas Gant's become a little bit of an enigma. He had the third most snaps of any linebackers against Minnesota, but against Oregon, he only had, I think, 5 snaps. And we know the foot injury set him back in the spring and maybe held him back a little bit in August as well. But you played so much against Minnesota, you hardly see the field against Oregon, and he's one of your veteran linebackers. I think a lot of people are scratching their heads about what's going on with Dallas Gant.
Yeah, and it seemed like against Minnesota, he was that Sam linebacker, he was that third linebacker, and then against Oregon, he was replaced by Palaie Naoteote as that Sam linebacker. So, yeah, it's not. You do have some questions about what's going on there, and Ryan Day said the entire group right now has not been playing. Basically, well, he was asked why is there so much substituting, and alluded to the fact that if the guys were playing better, they wouldn't be substituting as much. They would be looking for answers. And so for a guy like Dallas Gant, who isn't really getting any of the playing time right now, yeah, that's a tough one for him. You're seeing them try stuff, rolling different guys in. Nothing is really working right now because they are finding blockers to block them. And you compare that to what Oregon's linebackers were doing, where they were getting tackles at the line of scrimmage in the backfield. Those linebackers were avoiding blocks, getting free those linebackers up to make some plays. But also the linebackers need to stop avoiding. They're taking each other out at times. So there's just, I don't want to say it's a comedy of errors because I don't know that people are finding it very funny, but there's enough issues there that, it's not just players, it's not just coaching, it's not just scheme. It's all of it, and they're all making each other worse.
Let's switch gears, talk about offense. And Ryan Day, happy with the quarterback play. C.J. Stroud for the second week in a row, the Big Ten Freshman of the Week. Over 480 yards passing. It came in the loss, though, but Ryan Day said he saw some of the most accurate passing he's ever seen from C.J. Stroud in that second quarter.
Yeah, and I know we look at maybe the entire package and only focus on the bad at quarterback because we've seen so much good the last 3 years with Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields. And so when CJ starts out a little bit cold early and is throwing some high passes, ends with an overthrow that gets intercepted. But in between there, at one point, he had completed 16 of 17 passes, had thrown some really nice passes, hit Chris Olave down the sideline for one, dropped it in over a defensive back, and it was really, really good at times. And most of the time was really, really good. Had some memorably some bad throws that maybe stick out. But yeah, Ryan Day didn't have any patience for people suggesting that maybe the quarterback is the problem. He said the offense is not the problem. The quarterback is not the problem. They put up over 600 yards of total offense. They do need to finish better. They do need to pick up those first downs on fourth down, but don't come at him about CJ Stroud. And if you think somebody else needs to play right now, he didn't have much patience for that.
You mentioned the troubles on fourth down, the troubles running the ball. A lot of that goes back to the offensive line. And I think Coach Day made an excellent point on Tuesday that, yeah, it's a veteran offensive line that they played, but they haven't necessarily played in those same positions. And we know offensive line is all about chemistry. And when you haven't had those reps with those same guys next to you each and every time, it's going to take a little while to find that chemistry. And the fact that, Harry Miller hasn't been in there. They've gone with Luke Whippler at center. That's also disrupted that chemistry on the O-line.
Yeah, you've got that. And he also talked about they will be facing different styles of fronts for much of this season. And there's really getting to a point where they have faced the same kind of front that they can rely on what they did before in a previous game. It's almost like it's going to be a new experience for them against all of these different fronts that they'll be facing. And they can't just go back and say, this is what we did when we faced this front in week 3, or this is what we did when we faced this front in week 1, because things are going to be so different attacks defenses are going to be bringing. So it takes a while to build that kind of stuff up. Yes, they need to gel together up front, and this is maybe their third week together because, as you mentioned, Harry Miller went down. He was the starting center. So you throw Luke Whippler in there, and he's gotten better. But you did see some issues with that running game where they, Ryan Day said they need to block guys better. The running backs need to run the ball better. And again, going back to, you can't put it all on CJ Stroud. And so you've got all of this talent. but it does take some time. I keep going back to the fact that there's 4 offensive tackles in the offensive line, and does that impact the running game? Because these guys are more used to pass blocking than run blocking, or that's their forte, and so they've got to get a little bit low or a little bit meaner to do that run block. The running backs are also really good, but it was disappointing that they weren't able to do more against the Oregon defensive line, missing its best player.
Next couple of weeks, Ohio State should roll. They've got Tulsa, they've got Akron, they've got Rutgers, they've got Maryland. So what we're going to learn over the next couple of weeks isn't necessarily going to be this is a better team, because the opponents aren't going to be better. But there are certainly going to be steps we need to see over the next month or so as Ohio State gears up for the remaining Big Ten schedule.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to working on themselves, being fundamentally sound. There are going to be changes being made. So how do the Buckeyes handle those changes? How do they perform with those changes? Are these changes that the players want and are comfortable with? And I think at this point, what does a shutout against Tulsa mean? Maybe not a lot, but it means a lot more than giving up 27 points or something like that. It's like it tells you things are going in the right direction, or that there are some capable players, and there is some positive information there. It won't mean much until they face Penn State or whatever, and then you really see against a similar level of talent. But it's going to be a whole lot better than seeing more bad, and then then nothing you've done has worked.
All right, thank you very much, Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeScoop.com. Head to BuckeyeScoop.com. They've got great information and some insight that you're not going to find anyplace else. Gerd, thank you very much.
Thanks.